Hey everyone, welcome to Polygon Friends List. Today is May 8th, and I'm Ray Corriea, reporter, and I am here with features writer Charlie Hall. How you doing, Charlie?
Hello. You know, Alexa, I'm doing all right. I'm doing okay.
What are you up to today?
The babysitter just stopped by. My wife is out getting her hair did, and I am just rocking the home office, you know. Frankly, I made my bed here before I came on the internet. So that's what
How are the girls?
The girls are really good. Evie is at preschool today, one of her last couple of weeks of preschool.
Oh God, summer. That's coming.
Right?
Speaking of summer, there are games coming out, and a lot of these games have linear storylines, and that's what we're going to talk about today. It seems that recently games with sort of a linear storyline or sort of a very straightforward plot or gameplay have been getting a lot of hate lately, and I wanted to talk about that because there's a lot of really good games that have come out that are linear, but then people turn around and are like, oh, this game is too linear. So we're going to talk about that. Why do you think that linear storylines work? You've played a lot of games, Charlie. Like, what do you think about games that just sort of have a straightforward plot and aren't open world? Let's start there.
What do I think about them? I love all games, Alexa. I love the straight ones. I love the crooked ones. I love the ones with a little dog leg about halfway through. I love the open world games. I love the closed world games. I even love the MMOs. But there are many different kinds. So there's even several different kinds of linear, specifically, games that I can think of right now. So what in particular aspect of the game are you querying? Is it just the storyline? Is it the mission design? Is it the level design? What kind of linear are we talking about today?
Mission design as connected to story. I'm going to throw an example that's tired that everyone's been using for like 6 years now. Final Fantasy 13 got a lot of hate because people said it was too linear for a Japanese role-playing game because the mission design and the storyline were so packed tightly together and could only go in one direction. Didn't really give you a chance to sort of explore or do what you want. They called it Final Hallway 13. Yes. Contrast that to, say, The Last of Us. I think The Last of Us was a very linear game. The mission design was very much tied into the storyline. Yeah, you could explore areas and sort of there were multiple ways in some cases to, get up that staircase or get around that building. But it was still very much you're in this one area getting to this next plot point. And The Last of Us people loved it. But at the same time, it is linear, but then people are saying, oh, this game is too linear. I didn't like it. So in what cases, can you think of any games that have come out recently that are very much mission design tied into plot that is very straightforward that work really well?
That work really well.
We were talking about Kentucky Route Zero yesterday.
Well, yeah, we were. And it seems like I always talk about Kentucky Route Zero when I come on Friends List.
Talk about it again?
The reason it's top of mind, and we were talking about it yesterday, is because their episode 3 came out, I guess, 11 months after episode 2, which is crazy, but still haven't had a chance to get into it. But what the guys at Kentucky Route Zero, the guys at Cardboard Computer, talk about when they talk about their game, or the way some kind of highfalutin critics talk about when they talk about their game, is that it is a very writerly game. And what they mean by that is that it is a game with a very specific plot direction. It is a game with allusion and metaphor and foreshadowing that are all building towards one particular plot. And I think what you get from gamers is often this desire, for right or for wrong, to be able to explore, their own story and to make it their own plot and to make it their own level and move through that environment, move through that story, move through that world in the way that they want to.
But at the same time, like if you're saying the writers, it's a narrative-driven story, and they have a story that they want players to be told. That's not set up in a way that players are supposed to like go in and like have their own story. They're supposed to be experiencing the story that's being told. So, what would you say to someone who knocks Kentucky Route Zero for being too linear? Like, what is your argument to them about that?
Well, it's the very same knocks that came against something like The Walking Dead, right? So think that a lot more of us have played The Walking Dead or are familiar with The Walking Dead, perhaps, than have spent as much time with Kentucky Route Zero as I have. So let's maybe shift to that one, right?
Okay.
You're playing as the main character of Walking Dead, and you come to a decision point, right? Do I cut off my arm, or do I hold out and see if I can make it a little bit longer with this gaping zombie wound on my forearm, right?
Oof.
But at the end of the day, you're going to end up in the same place. Say it was a mission design. It's a shooter. I can go left through this level. I can go right through this level, but I'm going to end up in the same place. And a lot of gamers are looking for more divergent stories, more divergent levels, and ways to get to different endings. And sometimes different endings are not what the game designer and what the game maker have in mind. It's kind of like the difference between buying a novel, which has been drafted for years and years and edited for years and years and has a specific plot point and set of plot beats, and buying like an RPG source book,
Right.
which is just a bunch of characters and a bunch of environments and a bunch of weapons and guide on how to live here.
So going back to sort of The Walking Dead, like you do, sorry guys, spoilers, I'm always spoiling things on Friends List. For The Walking Dead, when you have to either cut off Lee's arm or leave it, you do end up in the same place. At the end of the day, you know that at the end of the thing, he's going to succumb and die. But cutting off that arm does buy you a little bit more time with the strength that Lee has at that moment. Like he's a little bit stronger for a little bit longer, but you still end up at the same point. So would you argue that it's still linear if it takes a different route to that same ending? Or do we want to give that a little more credit?
I think that it is still linear. Storytelling, telling a story, is a linear endeavor. If you are an artist and you're trying to make a movie, or you're trying to make a book, or you're trying to make a radio program, you have an end in mind. And I think that the same applies to a lot of different games. So when gamers complain that things are too linear, sometimes they're complaining that I can't, end the story with Lee alive instead of with Lee dead. Huge spoilers, so sorry. But 3 years, come on.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, there's this sense that I have that even when a story is linear, you can make the story your own by inhabiting that character and by taking that character's journey as your own and making a different story for yourself. Case in point, Kentucky Route Zero. There's parts in Kentucky Route Zero where you're playing both sides of a conversation. You're playing one of the Marquez sisters, and you're playing Conway, and you're both asking the questions and answering them. And something like that, I think, really points out the flexibility that a player has, even in a linear exploration, which a lot of games are, to make that story, make that character their own, and to make that experience their own. So the multi-branching path is happening inside your head, not necessarily on the screen in front of you.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot more games these days that sort of go that route. We already mentioned The Walking Dead. Telltale has The Wolf Among Us does it as well. But I sort of want to go back and dig into our past a little bit, because a lot of games back in the day, a lot of our action adventure games, they were linear, and it seemed like we were a lot less willing to point a finger at them and say, hey, this is too linear. This is the big L word and we don't like it. The Uncharted games are very much linear experiences. The early Prince of Persia games. I would argue that a game like Call of Duty, the single player campaign, is very much linear, and we don't hear anyone using the big L word to describe these games with their gameplay, with their mission structure and their plot, like so tightly tied together that you're sort of running down this hallway from section to section. And I think we were a lot more forgiving about that in the past. But then you have games like, again, The Last of Us. The recent Tomb Raider was very much linear, but no one that I have not heard anyone criticize it in that way. So why do you think that some games these days are getting a pass? And do you think that well, no, let's talk about that. I sort of went in two directions. Sorry. Why do you think games like that are getting a pass? Why are we more willing to overlook some games for being so straightforward than others?
I think that there is this Among the gamer community, there's almost this ghettoization
Get
of
what?
serialized. Well, people kind of put certain games into a ghetto, and they don't expect as much of them.
Ghettoization.
Yeah,
I
they
like it.
say, all right, this is it's just a Call of Duty game. Of course, it's going to be this big, long, linear thing. It's just the next. Uh, what was the other game that you would call not The
Oh,
Last of Us, Drake's Fortune, blah blah blah.
Uncharted. Yeah.
It's just the next Uncharted game. It's like a big action movie. Of course it's going to move from A to B to C. We don't expect much of it. But then you've got games like The Walking Dead. You've got games like Papers, Please. You've got games like The Last of Us. And they're like, well, it gave me this choice, but does it matter?
Right.
Does that choice matter?
Right.
Does it get me somewhere different? And I would say to people making that criticism, that's not what's important. What's important is what you're experiencing, what you as the player are going through. What is your process? What is your journey like? What is the game like inside your own experience? Not necessarily as it's externalized in, do you get sword X or sword Y? Do you make it to level A or level B? It's not a branching path for the game. It's a branching path for you, the player.
Why do you think we're developing this sort of, I don't want to call it an obsession, but we're developing this hunger for more branching paths in terms of story? Do you think that we've maybe grown bored of following, the action movie A to B straight line down to the finish line? Or do you think games like The Walking Dead are spoiling us?
Oh, are games like The Walking Dead spoiling us?
Is
I don't
Telltale
think so.
spoiling us?
I think that the community of game aficionados, and I keep calling them gamers, and I pinch myself every time I do it. I hate that word, but gamers want more from their medium. They want it to be transcendent. They want it to rise above the movie tropes. So in a way, something like Call of Duty, which is aping action movies from the 80s and 90s, is offensive to them in a way. It's just, why do everything that's been done before? Can't we do something different? Can't we do something that's uniquely possible only in games? And I don't know if their expectations are realistic.
How so?
Well, take a game like a truly open world game like Minecraft, right?
Or
you step in, or Daisy or something
Yeah.
like that, and you step into that environment, and you've got other people there, you've got NPCs there, you've got enemies there, and it allows for storytelling within that space. But that storytelling, it's very difficult to script that storytelling. Dean Hall, way back when Daisy was first coming out and first being developed as that mod for Arma 2, he toyed with the idea of a story, of a goal for players on a given map to accomplish, to turn on a power source, to find a group of scientists. And nobody really talks about that, but I think that it was abandoned early on because the emergent narratives that came from just the interactions of the players and the desires of the players were so much more interesting than anything that Dean could put together. And so he's like, I won't worry about it. So say that you're a game maker and you're making the next DayZ and you want to put story into it to fill that need, that unspoken desire among the gaming community. Now I have to put in a dozen compelling divergent storylines. I have to put in 24 compelling divergent storylines. And it makes the act of storytelling so much more difficult and so much more prone to failure because a player can do whatever they want once they enter that space.
Yeah, that's sort of listening to that. I guess that's why games like World of Warcraft have done so well for so long, is it sort of provides a really excellent space. Like, yeah, there's little threads and like plots that players can follow, but it's not so rigid that once they're in it, they can't also create within it. And those games have been out for forever.
But I don't know that I have a lot of colleagues or friends that would say some of their best storytelling moments came from inside an MMO, that they were so rapt and enraptured from the quests as they unfolded within a massively multiplayer game that they're just some of their best gaming experiences. They come from single player experiences, for better or for worse. And I don't know why that is. I think, well, I guess I have a thought, and that is because making more interesting stories is much harder than making one really great one.
So, do you think that we could possibly be satisfied by games that have that, that linear point A, point B, point C storyline, but maybe have like divergent things on the side that don't necessarily impact the story, but impact little bits and pieces of what's happening within it, like, say, character relationships? I'm thinking of Fire Emblem Awakening. I know that's probably not the first thing that comes to mind when people are like, games that do that, but the game allows you to pair off in combat and have side conversations with other characters and set them up between other characters. And as you as the story unfolds, these characters can marry, and you can find their children from the future. Spoilers. Their children, come back from the future to help fight this big fight, and you find them. And depending on who you talk to or who you pair off, it depends on which child you run into in the future. And even if, depending on your gender, that you can choose to be either male or female at the beginning of the game, and depending on who you go after, it could affect an actual major plot point. Spoiler, if you play as a woman, you have the option to go after the main prince guy. And if you marry main prince guy, if he likes you and marries you, then down the line, one of the other main characters you find out is your daughter. And it culminates in this scene. There's a scene where if you are her mother, then this scene's much more poignant. I'm going to spoil the hell out of this. I'm very sorry, everyone. But she has to kill you because killing you would stop this big cataclysmic thing from happening in the future. And so it's your daughter with her sword turned to you saying, Mother, I'm sorry, I have to do this for whatever. And you sort of accept it. And you're like, fine, if you have to kill me to save the world, like, this is what you have to do. And it's very upsetting and it's very poignant. But if you're not her mother and you're, a dude or just a random chick and she's like, I have to kill you to save the world, it sort of loses that poignancy. But it's a very small detail within the game that changes a major part of the game without changing the game. Do you think there's a way for us to be satisfied and let narrators tell the story that they want to tell? Obviously, the Awakening developers had a story that they wanted to tell, but this one thing could change the way it's taken, but not change the story. Do you think we could be satisfied with experiences like that and still allow game makers to tell the story that they want to tell? Or are we all spoiled and everything needs to be open world exploration all the time? Can we be happy, Charlie Hall? Can we really be happy?
I think we can be happy. I think that I've become tongue-tied. The side quests, right, that you're talking about, it's something that we've seen in games like Mass Effect. It's something that we've seen in, the Elder Scrolls series. Yeah. All these very rich RPG worlds really excel. Right. They excel at, what I would call subplots. But those subplots, they allow room for nuance, and they allow the shape and the color of experience for the player to be subtly altered. And that, I think, is where games really excel. You're reading a book, you're watching a movie. You can't step into that role and make it your own, right, in the same way that you can with a game.
That's what fan fiction's for, though. Fan fiction.
But in a game like you're describing, that becomes your outlet for fan fiction. If you want the guy to get the girl or the girl to get the guy, you get to pick, you get to choose, you get to work towards that end, and you get to make it your own. But then also the game maker and the game writer get to surprise you with the outcomes of that.
So the big question, in 2014, where we have all of these experiences that allow you to do that, and these, big open world games like DayZ and Minecraft and Arma and stuff, why do we look at linear games and point that finger and say, hey, we don't like this? Do you think moving forward there is still a space for that A to B experience? Or do you think our tastes are maturing at such a rapid pace that we are just going to be bored of them?
I think that as we go forward, more attention is going to be paid to the value of the story to be a transformative experience for the player. And I think that the way that that story takes shape is going to be the same, and it's going to be different, and it's going to be subtle, and it's going to be nuanced in ways that it's never been before. So I think that we can have it both ways. We can have that linear A to B journey. We can have that divergent, emergent experience. We can have all of those games. I'm not, I don't like just one kind of food, right? I don't walk out and just have pizza every day as much as I'd like to.
Oh, you don't do that? Food. You don't do that? Oh, anyway.
I like to mix it up. And I think that gaming is maturing, and I think that the audience is maturing, and the community that appreciates games is maturing. And I think that there's more than just one kind of game out there. But linear games are going to be around forever.
Forever and ever. I just really want Battlefield to just move me with a really gripping story where I can play with cats or something. I'm still holding out for Call of Duty Homeward Bound. I think that'd be a good idea.
Call of Duty
Homeward Bound. You're just all animals. I think that would be great.
How about Call of Duty Gone Home? A soldier coming back from a tour and experiencing.
Oh, get on that, Steve Gaynor. I know you watch this. Awesome. Cool. Well, I think we've hit all those major points, and I think we gave our audience something really great to chew on. If you have anything else to tell us, you can drop it in the comments. Thank you for watching Polygon Friends List. This video will be available on Polygon.com along with a bunch of other really awesome content like Charlie's awesome stories. And this will also be on YouTube, so you can watch it there and watch it on our site. Charlie, thank you so much for joining me today.
No, thank you for having me, Alexa. Always a pleasure.
Super enjoyed the banter. We'll have to do this again. And thank you guys for watching. Take care.